Welcome to the World History 1 lecture series. At the end of each slide there will be a 10-second delay. Use this time to pause the presentation and complete your notes. When you are done, push play and you will move forward. This lecture will begin in 5 seconds. Welcome to World History 1 Lecture 6.4 on the rise of imperialistic Rome. Let's take a step back for a second because we've covered a lot of history so far. We split time in two between BCE and CE, and we also split time between prehistory and history. Just looking at history, we've seen events in the ancient era, the classical era, and the medieval era. For example, we looked at ancient river valley civilizations, ancient Mesopotamia up to the Persian Empire. We looked at Indian and Chinese civilizations, 1000 BCE through 1500 AD, just starting to get into the modern era. We spent a lot of time with the Greeks. We looked at Minoan up and through Hellenic and Hellenistic Greeks, which brought us close to the BCE-CE split. And then we looked at the Roman Republic, which has brought us right up to the birth of Christ. We've covered almost 3,300 years so far, and we have about 1,500 years to go. But today we're only going to look at 39 years of history. Why are we going to look at such a small amount of time? Well, you see, civilizations change gradually over time. But sometimes major events can change everything in a few years. And that's what you're going to see today as we move Rome from a republic to an empire. With that said, go to the next slide. Civilizations don't just change, they change for a reason. And Roman civilization changes radically due to economics. For Rome, greed is not good. Patrician farmers own large estates called latifundium and take control of all agriculture from the plebeians. The plebeians have no control of what they can farm or where they can farm. In fact, patrician farmers use slaves as cheap labor and push out the plebeian farmers. So now we have a bunch of plebeians with no place to live and no job. They've got to go somewhere, and they do. Plebeian farmers move into the cities, which led to a rise in unemployment because there are no jobs for them. Rome has a problem. There is a growing population of desperate, homeless, poor plebeians. Something's got to change. Go to the next slide. As the patricians grow greedier, they badly damage the republic. Parity or equality between patricians and plebeians declines, and the patricians seize control of the government. In the Roman Republic, there was once power sharing. Now the patricians have all the power, and everyone else has no power. The Roman patricians do some silly things with their power. The Romans fight a series of costly civil wars with their Italian allies from 91 to 88 BCE. We call these the social wars. They're unnecessary, but they do some significant damage. The economy is in trouble as the value of money decreases. We call that devaluation, while the cost of goods increases. We call that inflation. This is the perfect storm for a revolution. Go to the next slide. A lot of things are going to happen quickly in Rome, so we're going to use this timeline to organize these events. Julius Caesar is a political class patrician who is popular with the plebeian masses. In other words, he's a government patrician and he's saying things that are helping him rise to power, using the plebeians as his strength. At the same time, a slave revolt led by Spartacus is ended by Pompey and Crassus, who become co-consul in 70 BCE. These two men are now the most powerful men in Rome, but Caesar has a lot of power because he has the support of the plebeians. So these three men form a political alliance called the First Triumvirate, with Caesar as high priest and Pompey and Crassus as co-consul, that lasts from 59 to 53 BCE. Caesar then leaves Rome and conquers Gaul, which is what we know as modern-day France, in 58 to 50 BCE. Go to the next slide. Political alliances are great until they're broken, and then it's all downhill from there. And that's exactly what happens to Rome. Crassus dies in 53 BCE in a North African battle. And Pompey tells Caesar not to enter Rome with his army from Gaul. In other words, the most powerful man in Rome, Pompey, tells the most popular man in Rome, Caesar, do not cross the Rubicon River and come down here to Rome with your army. And as Caesar does so, he says, the die is cast. Caesar doesn't listen and crosses the Rubicon River, which causes a civil war that Caesar wins. Caesar then enters into an alliance with Cleopatra of Egypt around 49 to 48 BCE. And after this point, Caesar consolidates or brings together his power and rules Rome as a dictator appointed by the Senate from 48 to 44 BCE. Caesar is finally named dictator for life in 44 BCE. Go to the next slide. Once you're appointed dictator for life, it's only a matter of time before someone tries to kill you, and things are about to get messy. Caesar is killed in the Senate in a mass stabbing led by Brutus and Cassius in 44 BCE. Caesar fell on his knife 23 times. No, in reality, Brutus and Cassius lead a mob that kills Caesar in the middle of the Roman center of government. Here's what happens. Octavian, who is Caesar's heir, it's his stepson, Mark Antony, who is Caesar's ally, and Marcus Lepidus, who is another ally of Caesar, create the Second Triumvirate on their own from 43 to 31 BCE. They are not appointed to be the leaders of Rome. They just take control of the civilization. And that is the end of the Roman Republic. But the people in Rome are still upset that Caesar is dead. So the armies of Antony and Octavian fight another civil war and beat Brutus and Cassius. Cassius actually commits suicide in 42 BCE. Marcus Lepidus is removed from the Second Triumvirate. And now we're going to have a third civil war. Octavian defeats Mark Antony and Cleopatra and becomes Caesar Augustus, the first Roman emperor, from 31 BCE to 14 CE. Go to the next slide. Roman civilization has moved from a republic, which is run by the people, to an empire, which is going to be run by an emperor. And Roman civilization dominates everything once it becomes an empire. Roman trade and culture spreads throughout the Mediterranean basin to Africa, Europe, and Asia, including the Hellenistic world of the Eastern Mediterranean. They take over everything from Spain through Egypt through Alexander the Great's old empire. And the empire is unified and enlarged by imperial authority and the military. There is one major flaw, which is that no mechanism exists for the peaceful succession of emperors. There is no way to get a new person in there without there being some sort of a political or even bloody fight. But for now, the Roman Empire will be powerful for the next 200 years. For the rest of civilization, don't mess with Rome. That's it for this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in class.